Between the video games I've been playing for the main channel, as well as random retro games that I've just felt like knocking off my backlog, I did manage to squeeze in quite a few 2024 releases that I would consider hidden gems, and I want to highlight some of them today before inevitably coming back to this idea with a follow-up around December or January-ish. And honestly, this year has already had some pretty massive bangers: Paper Mario Thousand Year Door HD, Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, Persona 3 Reload, Animal Well, Prince of Persia. Hell, I probably put more time into Balatro than anything else this year. But these games, you all probably heard about plenty by now. In usual fashion, I want to shine some light on lesser talked about games. So if you're someone who subscribes to the whole idea of, oh, gaming is boring nowadays, or I don't know man, this year isn't just hidden the same way some other years have, sit back, relax, and maybe add some of these games to your backlog. You'll thank me later. Sandland is one of those games that for me is a little bit of style over substance, and one of those games that it's very hard for me to be completely objective about, because yes, as you can see, this is clearly an Akira Toriyama styled game. And if you like Dragon Ball, you like Dragon Quest, you can kind of get a decent idea on what to expect with the characters and the world and a lot of the robot designs. Like, very cool. It is also very interesting in terms of the impact of Toriyama, because this is a story that no one ever really talks about. I didn't know Sandland was a thing for the longest time until this game got announced. And I wanted to just play it for that alone. And man, I'm really glad I did, because something about playing this giant action RPG in the Toriyama style, it just hit me. It just resonated with me so well. And like, objectively, I guess it's just kind of because it is very repetitive. It's a series of quests. The story is about government and conspiracy. Like, they have a bunch of water that they don't want to give to the people, and you gotta stop that so you can satiate and quench the thirsts of all the people who are suffering. Like, okay, fine. And you play as a little demon guy, and you're with two old guys. How crazy and exciting. And then you can either run around and you can beat people up, or you can get into one of multiple vehicles, and the combat just kind of boils down into aim your cursor at the guy and then shoot him. It's very repetitive. Like, it's just that for the entire game, with a story that is cool because the characters are very interesting and just fun to look at because the designs are so cool. But it's not really so engaging in terms of just gameplay. You're not really going to expect anything crazy changing over the duration of this like 20-30 hour-ish game. It was just, man, constantly just wanting to be in a Toriyama world. It just felt really good. It felt really cool to play a Toriyama world that wasn't Dragon Ball or Dragon Quest, and I got to learn all these new characters that I'm really in love with now, and I'm just so glad that a Toriyama story got this much passion put into it. There are combat missions, there are stealth missions, there's a ton of side quests. Like, all these towns have so many different characters that you can go and interact with, and they all have the typical mindless things that they need you to get done, and you can do them if you want to. There are a series of battles that you can go to, and if you want to fill out just a list of battles for one specific guide, like, cool, you can do that. And if you think, oh, it's just a desert stage, that's not interesting, well, it's mostly desert, so like, in terms of visual variety, there honestly isn't all that much. It's an interesting thing to look at here, where I think it's totally fine to look at a game as just like a pure, like, just subjective, I love this. Like, I can acknowledge that there are things that I'm not super a fan of, but it just has so much heart and passion, and getting to experience a Toriyama world goes such a long way. So if you're interested in what you've seen and you think that the style will carry you throughout the entirety of the adventure, I say give it a shot, because man, seeing Toriyama's work like preserved like this, I love that. Sandland is a really cool game. You are Peter Schwarz. Immediately looking at this game, it took me 2 seconds to go, okay, this is basically perfect. This is the level of idiocy I love in my indie games, because this is just the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Okay, so you play as Peter Schwarz. That's you, and all you want to do with your day is grill, enjoy the nice sunshine, but oh no, the evil scientists have gotten a hold of you and have taken you away to an evil facility where you've been cloned into a bunch of different forms. So now there's a bunch of little Peters just all over the place. And then you, as the original Peter Schwarz, have to run around this area, and you gotta kick all the other Peters' asses. And that's the only way you can clear things out and save the day, is just destroy every other Peter, or sometimes have them team up alongside you, because you can change into them. They all have different abilities and whatnot. It's kind of a Metroidvania. It's actually kind of like a spiritual successor to Metroid 2, in the sense that you just know there are Peters around every corner, and then you just gotta take them out. And it is repetitive, But God, it's so fun because it's so stupid, and you have damn near a Super Smash Brothers moveset, okay? Because you find these Peters, you get locked into a little box a lot of the times, and then it's like, okay, now you can destroy them. God, it's amazing. It's amazing. And like having just this giant Metroidvania-like world is already like a really cool thing. There's also a speedrun mode if you want to do that. There's a way for it to track the time it takes you to play the game. Like that's all cool. But there's also a pure combat-based mode too. They just have fully embraced that, hey, the moveset's kind of Smash-like, so you can just pick any of the Peters that you've unlocked, and then with local buddies, just go all hands on deck and fight each other. It's awesome. At the time of this video, it is only released on Steam, and I really hope that it does spread its wings a little bit more because this is great. Normally, I feel like a game that's such a blatant 8-bit style of an indie game, it really doesn't mean a whole lot because there's like a ton of them out there, but this is just such a combination of great mechanics that do only have 2 buttons. It is still NES styled, but just such a stupid idea that's executed so well. Oh man, You Are Peter Schwarz was it was so good. Earlier this year, I made a relatively extensive review on one of the biggest surprises in Nintendo's entire history, let alone just the Switch. I know maybe I'm over-exaggerating it, but something about a remake of the top-down Another Code on DS and its sort of side-scrolling sequel on the Wii with a totally different and really fresh art style with a whole bunch of new cutscenes and voice acting. Like, man, Another Code Recollection, it has been months since this game first came out, and I wouldn't say I'm surprised, I guess, but I've yet to meet a single other person who's played this game, and it's a shame. I'm gonna just keep promoting it, man. This game was such a nice time. I think it very clearly just depends on your tolerance for visual novel-esque types of games or just 3D adventure games in general, because it's not like it's a very exciting premise. You play as a young girl, Ashley, you have memory issues, hence the whole recollection thing, and you're just kind of exploring this area. On the first game, it's mostly like this giant mansion. In the second game, you got a big island to explore, and there's just like a bit of a mystery around both games. There's some family stuff in there. I think there are some relatable components with the way the family stuff is structured. There's some mystical components, especially with the first game. And there are some plot changes that were done with the second game to make it a little more consistent with the first game, since you knock out both games 1 and 2 back to back. And I don't know, man, just I still appreciate this game so much. I think this is just a situation where I'm gonna always have this game ranked way higher than a lot of other people, because something about it just really, I think it was like a bit of it being different than the typical Nintendo game, just having it just be something that was nice and relaxing as opposed to something that's a little more bombastic, like an Ace Attorney game or whatever. This was just a nice calming time. It was cool as a Nintendo fan to see this little very niche part of Nintendo history be given such a nice brand new coat of paint. If you want to try something new, Nintendo also has Famicom Detective Club out there if you want to try another Nintendo purely story-based game, but I really think that Another Code Recollection deserves to be played if you want something that is more on the niche Nintendo side of things, if you want a story that is, you know, a little bit out there but more grounded than a lot of other visual novels that are really popular. Just, man, this is good. And if Famicom Detective Club can get a sequel all these years later, I really hope that Recollection, we can get something out of this in the future. Like, just, I like this. I don't know what to say. I have nothing else to say about this. It's just Another Code was good. No one played it. It's a shame, and I can't wait to talk about this again in a few months. It's almost kind of astounding to me that Penny's Big Breakaway didn't get talked about anywhere near as much as I thought it was going to. It did review well, but I'm not hearing anyone talk about it, which is kind of amazing because when this game was first revealed in a Nintendo Direct, it was made out to be the next great 3D platformer of all time because it's made by the guys who made Sonic Mania. And then it just kind of came and went. And I think the whole main reason is that ultimately, while it is really, really good, it is a bit unpolished. All the things you would want out of a game like this are there. The art style, fantastic. Character design, great. I love the fact that there are so many enemies that are penguins, and then there are parts of a lot of the levels where you're getting chased by a ton of penguins. I think that's really cute. Music is nice and bouncy. When the game has a really good flow, it hits super well. But man, there are just so many different things that you can pull off, and I feel like a lot of those moves don't meld together as much as you want them to. There is a flow issue with this game, because you can do so much with that yo-yo, man. You can spin it, you can ride on top of it, you can place it in midair and grapple off of it, and then you can swing off poles with it, and then there's a dash move that can be sometimes hard to nail, and there's just so much, and just so many times I was falling to my death because I didn't really get just an idea of what I was doing. And maybe that's just something that I need to put a lot more time into, but I mean, I beat the game, and I was still struggling with it. Maybe I just gotta put in more time because, man, the skill ceiling is high, but just the point of entry is a little bit higher. Like, man, I don't know if it's just me, but at the end of every level, I was finding it so difficult to just land on the center platform to get a better chance for extra points. Like, man, I was missing it so often, and I couldn't ever place why. I was trying so hard to nail the swings and whatnot, and just, I could see what they were doing. Because a lot of times they have level design there that's just intended for you to nail that middle jump, and I just couldn't do it, man. It's a bit rough. When the game just has a bunch of wide open spaces with a bunch of ramps and stuff, that's when it's at its best. When things get a little bit more condensed, it's a little bit rougher. I think the best parts of that are like the side quests that pop up when a character's like, oh man, I need this delivered in 2 seconds. Can you please do it? And then you try it, and that stuff's cool. But yeah, this game is really good, had a whole high bar that it had to hit, and I think it was just maybe a little bit too ambitious. But for a first full original game from this studio, I think it was still a success, and I'm very hopeful for the team's future. Penny's Big Breakaway, if you're a big fan of 3D platformers, which I know if you're watching me, a lot of you are, then yeah, if you haven't played this yet, go ahead and play it. It's not going to be any groundbreaking phenomenon like Sonic Mania was, but damn it, it's still a really, really good time. The whole game begins because this big guy, you get him embarrassed because you get his clothes off and he's just in underwear, and then they're like, go, my penguins. Like, that's great. That's great. If that doesn't sell you, I don't know what else will. Now let's make no bones about it. Okay, this is very clearly an Undertale-inspired fan game, and I know there are plenty of those, but hear me out, okay? Here's the kicker. This one's pretty good. You're a kid, you get dropped into a wacky, colorful world filled with a bunch of wacky and kooky characters, and you just kind of go. There's a lot of jokes, but whatever, man, just go. There's a battle system, and you can either, do a pacifist run, or you can try and attack everyone, typical stuff, and then the pacifist run typically means you're going to be playing a lot of square-based minigames. Hey, look at that. It's not really a massive surprise as to what this is trying to be, okay? But forget all that. The things that make Athenian Rap City stand out amongst the crowd of Undertale-style fan games is, for one, it is genuinely hilarious. It's not trying too hard, in my opinion, to be funny. It's just funny in a different way. Like, for example, the start of the game has a questionnaire with just a bunch of random questions, and you can answer them however you want, of course. And a lot of the answers for them are just, I don't know, a puke and throw up. And maybe I'm just simple-minded, but that was funny every single time. But the whole main gimmick with this game is the Rhapsody mechanic. It's not just a clever play on the title of the game. The Rhapsody idea is that your adventure is going to be ultimately unique to you. There's no like weird creepy undertone of the game like an Undertale or Undertale equivalents. Like, this is just a pure comedy adventure. There's just a lot of choice. There's a whole lot of choice, so much so that it's going to be very, very difficult for your adventure to be the same as everyone else's. So once you're done, your Rhapsody gets saved, and you can then share it with everyone else. You can read what other people's Rhapsodies were like, and maybe you can mess with them even more in the future. So you combine like this wacky, kooky, the sprite work is ridiculous. Once again, it's just completely unhinged. It's one of those things where I can't really say too much because it spoils so much of the fun, but it's such an awesome time. Combined with the social element that this game should provide with other players, I think that's really damn cool, man. I think that's awesome. Apparently one of the things the game keeps track of, it says so on the Steam page, is how many times your protagonist has farted. So that's cool. I feel like similar to just the whole idea of retro 8-bit styled platformer, it's easy to look at a game that is trying to be inspired by Undertale and just disqualify it right off the bat, which I don't think is very fair, because it's very clear that some of these developers are putting in a lot of love and passion into this idea where it's a top-down RPG, but you could do whatever the hell you want. And shout out to the Thunder Goober, man. Thunder Goober, he's a cool guy. The epitome of just looking at a game on Steam and going, hey, this looks pretty cool, I'm gonna wishlist it, and then you notice it's on sale, and then sure, I'll buy it, why not? And then you have a great time with it. That is exactly what happened here with MiniShoot Adventures, because oh my god, not only was it like, okay cool, Nice art style, everything really pops. It's a twin stick shooter, I like those. Why not? What I didn't know going into this is it's also a Zelda game. It's a top-down Zelda game. You travel across different screens and dungeons and solve some puzzles, and it's all in the form of being a twin stick shooter. That's so cool. It's not very often when I find a type of game that I really feel like I've just never seen before. And sure enough, this is what we got. There are really no complexities here. It is as simple and straightforward as you can get, and it's just a joy to play. Top-down Zelda game, twin stick controls, there's a lot of combat, a lot of ships to shoot down, there are these big imposing bosses, ooh, you're constantly leveling up, and then you're building up this currency, so you can go back to the main town and level up even more, you're building up these different parts of the map from these waypoints, and then you go back to the town again, and you can show up even more of the map, and you can find other dungeons that have more stuff in them. It's just a constant joy, you're constantly moving and constantly doing stuff, and it's so fun. There is no other game in today's video that just epitomizes the feeling of pure joy. That's what MiniShoot Adventures is, pure joy. At the time of this video, similar to Peter Schwarz, this game is only available on Steam. I would imagine it's going to get a console port at some point, and then if it does really well, inspirations are soon to follow, but never forget the origins of a video game idea that you probably have not gotten to play around before. Top-down Zelda as a twin stick shooter with a great art style, fun music, just man, out of nowhere, this game took me by surprise, and I love it. Excellent game. Here we have another game that wears its inspiration on its sleeve, but it does another damn good job. Here is Berserk Boy. Do you like Mega Man, Mega Man X, Mega Man Zero, that whole thing? Here you go. You play as this boy named K, you are tasked with saving the world, you have this crazy robot suit that you can turn into, and then you can shoot things at other robots. Of course, man. Of course, I'm down. If anything though, the way I saw this game when I was playing it is that it almost feels like just a better form of Gunvolt, which yes, is Mega Man inspired as well, but in terms of chaining your attacks with different enemies, and then you can do the spark move, and then a lot of it you're doing like grinding, and just like a sense of flow that you don't necessarily get with Mega Man, but they were trying to do with Gunvolt, this succeeds a lot better than those games did, in my opinion. Platforming is very fast and frantic, the combat is very powerful, you just feel like a badass, the soundtrack is really rockin', levels are really nice and sprawling, and you have like these different things that you can collect, like you're trying to save hostages on top of just platforming your way around, and there are some times where some things were a bit confusing, like one of the early stages is you have to find enough hostages for you to open up a door, and I just couldn't find one of them for the life of me because the game doesn't guide you on anything. That was a bit annoying. Like, it's not a perfect game by any means, but honestly, the biggest complaint I have with this is that I don't really like the font that they chose for the cutscenes. It's such a minor thing, but this basic Arial-ass font, it really kind of took me out of it, because everything else about this game is so stylized. They went with the most generic font for the cutscenes, but quite frankly, if that's the biggest complaint I got, I think that speaks pretty good for this game. So you got a classic styled run and gun with a lot of really awesome movement tech. You're getting new abilities as you progress through the game. You got some issues with backtracking and whatnot if you just can't find everything that you're trying to do on your first run. It may be just for me, I'm not really a big fan of the hub world that you return to every mission. Like, I'm not a fan of that. You can skip it, which is fine, but I just want to play the game because it feels so good. I feel like the home world like really slows things down to a crawl, and I'm just not a big fan of it, but again, minor complaint. So shout out to Berserk Boy outdoing Gunvolt in just one game. Here's hoping we get like a dozen sequels and maybe even a rhythm game spin-off like that series got, because man, there's a lot more you can do with this than Gunvolt. So kudos to you, man. Berserk Boy rules. And that's going to wrap up this hidden gem video as we approach the holiday season for 2024. Once again, I will return to this when we get to December, January-ish, and we can really look at the entire year as a whole. There are many other hidden gems that I'm hoping to get done by that point. That's another reason why I wanted to do this video now, because I'm planning on, later on this year, making it a whole lot bigger. There's games like Crow Country I want to talk about. I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about Unicorn Overlord. I just started playing this Mario 3 inspired game called Kitsune Tales 2, and that game has a lot of promise as well, so we're gonna come back in a few months. Until then, I want you to keep track of your hidden gems for 2024. If there's any games that you recommend, you want to talk about, you want to discuss some of the games I talked about in this video, let me know down in the comments below. I'm looking to add to my backlog as well. So with all that said, look at Peter Schwarz. God, I love him.